Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you so much for coming. We're so excited that you're here. My name is Jane Ellickson Coplan. I'm the president of the local chapter of the League of Women Voters. I appreciate you coming today. We are very excited to be here celebrating the 100th anniversary of the adoption of the 19th Amendment. This event is a collaboration of 4 local organizations: the League of Women Voters, the Macomb Women's Club, which is a chapter of the General Federation of Women's Clubs, the Macomb Feminist Network, and the Western Illinois Museum. Before we get started with our speakers, I would like to make a few announcements. We appreciate everyone wearing a mask today, and we encourage you to continue to keep a physical distance from others. It's incredibly important that we all vote in November. Early voting at the courthouse starts on September 24th and continues through November 2nd. Absentee ballots can be ordered online now from the McDonough County Clerk's website, and they will be mailed out around September 24th. If you use an absentee ballot, you can mail it back through the Postal Service, or there will be a drop box on the east side of the courthouse where you can hand deliver your absentee ballot. And then, of course, the polling places in McDonough County will be open on November 3rd, so make a plan now about how you will cast your vote. If you are not registered to vote, or if you need to update your voter's registration, maybe update your address or something, there's a website that you can use to do that if you are a resident of Illinois. If you would like more information, the location of the website, we have some cards at the League of Women Voters table, so feel free to go over and get one. For the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to have a series of short talks about various aspects of the rights given to us by the 19th Amendment. After that, we're going to have a short parade around the park, when we'll end in front of the Facing the Storm statue, and we'll conclude there and have some pictures taken. I also want to mention that we will be live streaming tonight on Facebook starting at 7 p.m. That program will include 2 additional talks as well as the ones you will hear today. The Facebook page for that is titled 19th Amendment Celebration, Macomb, Illinois. As we begin our program of speakers now, we start by acknowledging a very important fact. The victory that we celebrate here today, the adoption of the 19th Amendment, was primarily a victory for white women. While it theoretically gave all women the right to vote, we know that black women were prohibited from voting in many areas of our country. We also acknowledge that within the women's suffrage movement, women of color were subjected to segregation and other racist practices by the white women in the movement. And we acknowledge that voter suppression practices today still disproportionately affect individuals of color. The women's suffrage movement was launched at the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848. Elizabeth Cady Stanton spoke these stirring words there. "We are assembled to protest against a form of government existing without the consent of the governed, to declare our right to be free as man is free, to be represented in the government which we are taxed to support, to have such disgraceful laws as give man the power to chastise and imprison his wife, to take the wages which she earns, the property which she inherits, and in case of separation, the children of her love." Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Mary McClintock, Martha Coffin Wright, and Jane Hunt were the leaders of the Seneca Falls Convention. Susan B. Anthony joined the movement about 3 years later. It took 72 years and the work of thousands and thousands of women and some men to gain the constitutional right for women to vote. In the end, ratification came down to one single vote the vote from Harry Burns of the Tennessee General Assembly, who was reportedly persuaded by his mother, Phoebe Ensinger Byrne, to vote yes. So that shows you the power of a single vote. Today I want to speak briefly about two women of the early 20th century. The first one is Carrie Chapman Catt. Catt was about 40 years younger than Susan B. Anthony, and in 1900 she followed Anthony as the president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Catt was a skilled political strategist involved in the suffrage movement starting in 1880. Her leadership was particularly instrumental in the last 5 years of the campaign. Catt devised what they called the winning plan, which carefully coordinated state suffrage with the national movement. And in 1920, she also founded the League of Women Voters with the intention of educating women on political issues, encouraging them to vote, and helping them to get registered to vote. While we admire her work in all those areas, we do also need to acknowledge that she used racist arguments in her attempt to gain the support of Southern leaders of the time. The League of Women's Voters National Organization has issued a statement regarding this matter, which can be found at the League's national webpage. I'm going to read a short portion of that to you now. The League was founded in 1920, just months before the ratification of the 19th Amendment by American suffragist Carrie Chapman Catt. Catt was a complicated character, a political operative, and by modern standards, yes, a racist. Her remarks are sometimes brushed over as signs of the times or a political strategy. But actions speak louder than words, and our organization was not welcoming to women of color through most of our existence. Today, we acknowledge this shortcoming and that we have more work to do. End quote. The other early 20th century woman that I want to talk about today is a woman named Ellen Cassia Kane Dowling. Ellen Kane Dowling was my grandmother, and she was a suffragette. Not a major figure by any means, but one of the many, many women like you and me, who campaigned in their own communities to win the right for women to vote. She did not envision women actually holding public office. What she and other women of her peer group really wanted was for women to have the political power to improve lives for the vulnerable members of society. This was the era of Jane Addams, of Carrie Nation, and other progressive women reformers, including Ida B. Wells, Florence Kelley, Charlotte Brown Hawkins, and Margaret Sanger. My grandmother cared about child labor laws, workplace protection, public health, and public education. On Tuesday, November 2nd, 1920, was the first national election where women voted. Ellen Dowling was an election judge that day. She was also an expectant mother. She was carrying my mother, who was born a few months later in 1921. For that reason, my mother used to like to say that she was present the first time that women voted. We all carry the legacy of our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, and all the women who walked before us. As I look around the park today, I am so inspired to see younger women and men who will continue to carry that legacy. Thank you very much.